Welcome everyone to part 3 of the Bluetooth app for SM Pixel V4 and HPixel. Today we're going to be looking at hum effects. So first thing, we'll open up the app. We'll make sure that our saber is connected. I can tell that it is because the Bluetooth icon at the bottom is lit up blue, and you can also see that we have this green symbol here, which means that it is connected. So let's turn the lightsaber on. And we'll click the first tab on the bottom. We have our preview at the top showing that it's a solid red blade. To create a new hum effect, we're going to click on New Light. We will choose Hum. And it presents us with this screen here. Here on this button, this allows you to save it. So it's saved this hum effect and it calls it Hum 100. To send the hum effect to the saber, I click on that little paper plane and it sends the effect. Underneath that, you will see Light Frame 1. To understand what light frames are, they're really more like layers. So imagine a gobstopper if you took a cross section. The color on the outside is the one that you would see, and then as you peel back or as you remove the outside layers, the inside colors start to appear. And we can add multiple light frames to the hum effect. So I'm going to click plus light frame. I'm going to leave the time as infinite because we want this effect to be permanent when on the hum. Time is more done for things like your outs and your ins, blaster, something that you don't want to be permanently there the whole time. Position will choose where on the blade it is, and the position can go from -100 to 100. I'm going to leave it at 0. That means that the hum, or this light frame, will light up the entire blade. And the length, so I can choose how long I want this layer to be. If I leave it at 100, it will completely surround the blade from hilt to tip. And at the bottom for color, you can choose colors. You can set it as transparent. It defaults to setting, and there's also a hum layer. If you want a specific color, you would choose the color. If you want it to be transparent, where it'll allow the layer underneath it to be seen, that's what you would choose. Setting, not 100% sure how it chooses its color through setting, but we'll learn as we go. I'm going to set this to blue. Now you noticed in my preview window that the lightsaber is blue. You don't see any red. And that is because light frame 2 is surrounding light frame 1. So you're not going to see any of the red because light frame 2 is the outer layer. If I want to be able to see the red underneath, I need to shrink light frame 2. So if I set light frame 2 to 70% and press OK, so you can see that we peeled back 30% of that blue layer to reveal the red layer underneath. And we want to see that on the lightsaber. I'll click the little paper airplane, and there you go. And I can keep creating more light frames. So let's add a third one. Let's make it yellow. Now because it's 100, it's going to take up the entire blade, which means that it's going to cover the other two layers underneath it. And again, if we want to see the layers underneath, I have to peel it back. So I'm going to set it to 50%. So now the yellow layer is only 50% of the blade. while the blue is 70% and the remainder is the red layer. And we'll send that, and you can see how that looks. Very neat. So that's how layers work. Now let me also show you how changing the position of a layer will affect the saber. I'm going to remove light frame 3 and just set it back to 2 frames like that. I'm going to set the blue layer to 30%. Now it's still going to only generate color from the hilt. So 30% of the blade starting from the hilt. But what if I want that blue to be in the middle of the blade? So I want to move it. That's where position comes into effect here. So let's just try putting position at 30, see what happens. So as predicted, it moved the blue section up 30%. Now we'll send that. So now we have a red, blue, red lightsaber. Each light frame can be edited as well. So if you look next to light frame 1, I have a plus and a minus. If I click on the plus, it gives me a whole bunch of different effects that I can choose. I have brightness blinking, the 2-color gradual change, breathing, random positions, fire beating. I mean, there's a whole bunch. You can read them yourself. I don't need to read them out loud. If I want this layer to be a fire blade, I can click fire. It asks me how long do I want that fire to be happening, and because this is a hum, I want it to be infinite. And then I can choose the color of the fire. Let's leave it at red and see how that looks. So the fire is only affecting light frame 1, which is the red section. It's not affecting the blue. It might look like it's affecting the blue on camera, but it is not. So let's add effect for light frame 2. I could make this really weird, and let's make it candy. So candy, again, the delay time, meaning when should it start, but this is a hum effect, so you leave it at 0. Time, leave it at infinite, and direction. So this will choose the direction of the candy effect because it is a moving effect. Do we want it to move towards the hilt or towards the tip? Let's try towards the tip and see how that looks. And I will send it. And there we go. We get this really weird looking lightsaber. If I want to delete one of my effects, I just click on that negative and it deletes them. And there we go, back to how we had it. So that's how light frames work. They stack on top of each other. You can set the length of each frame and the position of each frame. With that knowledge, you can create an infinite amount of different hum effects. Let's revert back to just a standard red blade. I'm going to show you all the different effects and how they look. We'll start with brightness blinking. Brightness blinking has the time, or the delay time, the time, and the frequency. Frequency is the part that we're going to be looking at first. This is going to blink the lightsaber every 500 milliseconds, or half a second. If you want it to blink more quickly, we'd reduce this number. If you want it slower, you'd increase it. So 1000 milliseconds is 1 second, 2000 is 2, and so forth. This next section, which is in Chinese there, this is the maximum brightness. So full brightness 100, and when it blinks, it's going to go to 0 brightness. So the blade is going to blink on and off. And let's have a look at how that looks. We'll send that. And there it goes. Brightness blinking. If we want to go faster, let's just set this to be 100 milliseconds. So this should be blinking very fast when I send it. And there it goes. Let's play with these numbers. So we'll leave the first number at max brightness. And the second one, let's just say we only want it to dim the blade to 50% brightness, not all the way to 0. And it's still going to do it quickly. Let's go even lower. Let's try 60 milliseconds. Press OK. And let's preview that. So now it's really a flicker. That looks so nice. I like that one. At the bottom, you can also add more brightness levels. So right now it's just switching between 100 to 50 and then back to 100. If I add a third one, I could actually have it blinking through 3 different levels of brightness. Or I could even add another one and leave that at 0. So the blade will start off at full brightness. It'll go down to 50. It'll go down to 25, and then it'll go down to 0, and then it will repeat. So let's see how this is going to look. And there's the effect right there. That looks very cool too. And let's see how that's going to look if we slow it down. So half a second here, 500 milliseconds. So 150, 25, 0, over and over. And that is brightness blinking. And you can keep adding more and more, and you can just scroll so you could make some really cool different brightness effects. Let's delete brightness for now and go back to our standard solid color there. 2-color gradual change. This is going to change the blade from one color to another and then back again. So back and forth between 2 colors. We leave delay and time the way they are and then have a look at color one time. So color one time is going to determine how long red is going to stay on before changing to green. So 0, meaning that it's just going to start changing to green immediately. And it's going to do it over 1,000 milliseconds. Once it reaches green, it's not going to stay on green. It's just going to shift right back to red. Let's leave it the way it is and have a look at how it looks right now. So it goes from green to red and does not stop on either color. Now let's start playing with these numbers. So we're going to set this to 1 second and 1 second. Now it's going to have red for 1 second, and then it's going to take 1 second to start changing color, and then once it reaches green, it'll stay green for 1 second, and then again change back to red in 1 second. So let's have a look at that one. And you can see that. So red, 1 second, switch to green, and stay 1 second. And let's just increase that there so you can really see it. So now 4 seconds. So it's going to stay red for 4 seconds. And now it'll take 1 second to shift to green. Green stays on for 4 seconds and shifts back to red. And at the bottom, you can change which colors you want. So maybe a blue to green shift. And also, if we want that color shift to be really slow, let's increase the time it takes for it to change from blue to green to 2 seconds. And then back again, we'll change that to 2 seconds. All right, so we should know what this is going to do even before sending it to the saber. 4 seconds on blue, a 2-second gradual change to green, 4 seconds on green, and then 2 seconds back to change to blue. And have a look. And there's that slow 2-second change to green. And then back to blue. And that is what 2 colors gradual change does. Again, we'll delete that frame and go back to red. The next option is brightness breathing. Let's have a look at that. So brightness breathing is pretty much the same thing as brightness blinking. It really is not a whole lot different. Except brightness blinking allows you to have multiple brightnesses, as we saw, while breathing is just going to have 2 brightness levels. So 100 and 0 in this case, or you can adjust them. So if we leave it the way it is, 2 seconds is the breathing time. It's going to go from full brightness to 0 in 2 seconds. Let's have a look. And then back up. So back and forth from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. And again, we can, if we don't want it to go completely dark, we can set the brightness to a little higher. And now it's just going to go between 100 and 36% brightness. And it's doing it over a 2-second period. Let's make this go really fast. Let's see how this looks here. So there it is. That's at 20 millisecond breathing time. And it's really kind of more of a really fast flicker. So yeah, you just play with your millisecond values. Play with your brightness levels. Send it, and you can see how it's going to look. And don't forget that you can do these effects on different layers. So you could have one section of the blade doing this breathing, another section of the blade doing the other type of blinking, and the gradual change. So, like I said, infinite possibilities. And that's really all there is to that brightness breathing effect. So let's carry on. The next one on the list is more colors, gradual change in set position. What this is a multicolor gradient. When you first open it, it has 3 colors on the bottom, red, green, and blue. And what this is going to do, it's going to combine red into green, green into blue, and then blue back into red. And it's going to do that along the whole blade. In other words, it's going to create a rainbow. Let's just leave the default settings the way they are and preview it. So there is the default settings. If I want to increase the gradient effect, I can increase this number, and now you're going to see the colors between red, green, and blue be much larger. So let's try that. So there you go. You can see that you get a lot of purple, a lot of orange, and a lot of yellow. We'll put that back down a little bit. Put it to 40 and have a look. And now you can see a little bit of that red on the blade, as well as the green and the blue, with a lot of gradient. If I want my colors on the bottom to be wider, I can choose the color length. Let's set it to 25 and see what happens here. So you can see how the red got bigger, the green got bigger, and the blue got bigger. You can add more colors as well, and you can also remove colors. I click on that plus, and I can add a yellow, I can add a cyan, and now it's just going to create more of a rainbow effect. It's going to bring that down and try again. So you can see there's that. I'm getting some pinks in there now, some more yellows. Let's just delete these. And I can do a 2-color gradient as well. So red and green. And of course you're going to be getting oranges in there. Let's just put this back to the way it was. Moving speed, this is going to move the gradient either towards the tip or it's going to move it towards the hilt. And you can control the speed. So now let's have a look at how that's going to look. And it's moving towards the hilt, and we can make it go really fast towards the tip, and it gives you that effect there. And just remember that you can have multiple frames. And then I can set that frame 2 to be 37, for instance. And you can see how frame 2 has been pulled back, allowing the rainbow only to be visible after the 37% of that blade shows blue. The next section is called Set Random Position. I'm not having any luck getting this to work. It's causing my saber to crash. But the idea is you would have your first light frame being a solid color, like red. I'd create a second light frame. I would choose white. And then in that second light frame, I would have Set Random Position. This is going to create a cracked blade look. And I could tell it whereabouts on the blade to show up. So if I have it set to 100 for set position, it's going to randomly create that white light anywhere on the blade. If I have the length set to 100, then all it's going to do is the blade will flash to white because this layer is taking up that whole, the whole length of the blade. So if I have it set to 20, it's going to create a 20% chunk of white on the blade, and it's going to randomly put it at different spots. And it's going to do that every 1 second. You can kind of see the preview, but unfortunately, if I try to send it, it will crash the saber. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is for now and move on. Fire beating. Fire beating creates this effect. You're not going to be using this effect so much for your hum. This is really good to use for prions. So let's just move forward. Fire rainbow. Again, you can choose the direction to the tip or to the hilt. And this is just going to create a rainbow. And you could do this manually using more color gradual change in set position. This just kind of has it already done for you. And we can change the direction of it. And that's Fire Rainbow. Swing brightness is for when you swing the saber, so you should not be using this for your hum effect. So we are going to skip this and move on. Rotate length. This is really neat. So this will make the blade get shorter depending on how you rotate the handle. So if I have the minimum length set to, let's say, 10, it's going to have the blade get shorter as you tilt it down. So my blade is on a flat surface, so it's 50%. If I were to tilt the blade up, the blade gets longer, and then it gets shorter the more you tilt it downward. The next section is blend color. For blend color to work, you need to have more than one layer. So let's add a second layer first. We'll make that second layer blue. We'll leave the position and length the way it is, and when I press OK, the blade will be blue because the red is underneath. I want to blend that blue into the red, so on my light frame 2, which is the blue one, I'm going to choose blend color, leave the time as infinite, press OK, and send it. Now it blended the blue with the red to create this purple. And that is blend color. Next, we have wave random. This is going to create random waves that are dimmer than the blade, and they're going to travel from the hilt to the tip. Wave length. How long are these waves? What is the max brightness of the blade? The minimum brightness? The amount of waves traveling, and how fast they're traveling. We'll leave it at the default and preview it. And you can see we're getting just these random dark spots moving up the blade. If I want more of those dark spots, I'm going to increase this number, put it really high, and we get more. We want them to move faster. You can increase that number. Let's put this wave count down, and let's just increase this the minimum brightness. So now it's not going to completely dim the blade, and we'll slow it down so we can see it here. Really hard for the camera to pick up, but you can see these dim spots moving up the blade. Just not as dark as they were. And that's really all there is to wave random. Blocks. We'll leave it the way it is and have a look. This is reminiscent of the blaster blade. So it just creates blocks of light that travel either to the tip or to the hilt. And you can decrease the speed, so it'll look something like that. And you can change the direction. And you get an effect like that. This is best used for when you press the blaster button, or for preons, things like that. Not so much for hum. Next is color blinking. Very simple. This is just going to blink from one color to the next, how long it's going to do it for. So if it's going to do it an infinite amount of times, and how fast is it going to blink between the two colors. So we'll leave it at red and green, and it's just going to blink back and forth between red and green. And you can add more colors, and it'll just blink from red to green to purple. Very simple for color blinking, so we don't need to spend a lot of time here. Next is more colors, gradual change. So this is going to do a infinite color cycle, and it's going to do it in a period of 2 seconds, and we can have a look at that. Again, very simple. It's just going to go from one color to the next, and because we're using the RGB, it's going to display every color possible. If you want to make that slower, just increase your milliseconds, and now it's going to do it over a time span of 5 seconds. Let's move on. 2 colors, gradual change in set position. This one's going to create a 2-color gradient. You're going to choose whether it's side to side, meaning that color 1 will extend from the hilt while color 2 starts at the tip. Or you can have middle to both side. I'm going to show you that one after. Let's start with side to side. Color 1 length. The length of the red. If I set this to 60, it's going to occupy 60% of the blade starting from the hilt. Color 2 length. I'm going to set this to 40. So it's going to occupy 40% of the blade starting from the tip. I'm going to press OK, and you can see that there is no gradient, there's no gradual change, and that's because we didn't allow for any room. So we need to decrease the values of 1 and 2 and allow some of that gradient to show through. Also, I'm going to get rid of green, change it to yellow. This will give it more of a fiery look. Okay, so I don't need to have so much yellow, so I'm going to reduce that yellow to 20. You look at those two values, 60 and 20, which is 80. That means that there's going to be a 20% section of the blade that's going to be a gradient, so it's going to be orangey. And I'll press OK and have a look, and let's preview it on the saber. And you can see it there. It doesn't really look like a whole lot of orange. It is there, so let's create more of a gradient. I want less yellow. So I'm going to reduce that yellow value to 10. And it's getting better, but still I want less yellow. So I'm going to make that yellow just 5, so only 5%. And let's have a look now. Okay, still not happy with it. So let's make red a little higher and see how that looks. Yeah, it's getting better. You can just keep playing with it until you find something you like. The other choice is middle to both sides. So now this is creating a gradient where red, or color 1, starts from the middle of the blade, while color 2 starts from the tip and the hilt. I'm going to reduce color 1, and you'll see that the red's going to shrink towards the middle. And if I want to make more yellow, I can do it like that. Again, just remember that the bigger you have color 1 and color 2 for lengths, the less gradient you're going to have. The next one is called change position and length in set time. I'm going to skip this for now because this is something you're going to use when you're doing prions and out effects or in effects or pre-offs. Let's continue. Fire. Straightforward, just your fire blade. You can change the color of the fire blade. Very simple. If you don't want to have to manually make a fire blade, you can just use the pre-installed option for fire. Same with candy. And you can choose the direction of the candy. These aren't really unique effects. They added them just to make it easier if you wanted a candy blade or a fire blade. Launch light. This creates that stacked effect. Not something you're really going to use for hum. You're going to use this for outs, for ins, and pre-ons and pre-offs. We're going to just skip that one. Swing length. Swing length means that as the blade swings, and this is not really a hum effect, but as you swing the blade, and I can't really do it right now, it will adjust the length of the blade. So this is something we'll save for the swing tutorial. Next we have sparkle. We'll leave the settings the way they are and then have a look at it. So sparkle creates kind of that cracked blade. And with sparkle, we can choose how many sparkles appear by adjusting the chance percentage. If I set this really low, it decreases the amount of sparkles that show up on the blade. If I set it to 100, this thing's going to go crazy. Still looks really awesome when it does that. And we're just going to set this back down. You can adjust how bright you want those sparkles. So if you want something that's not going to be that bright, we can just lower it. And they just barely show up. You can also choose the color of your sparkle. So what would go good with red? I'm still thinking yellow. And we get that effect there. So straightforward. You get that really cool effect. Looks awesome. The next choice is wave. This is going to be very similar to wave random, but just a little different. So we'll leave the settings the way they are. We'll preview it, have a look. So this creates a steady wave traveling up the blade. We can choose the wavelength. If we want the wavelength to be small, let's have a look. And it makes those little waves much smaller. Or we can have one humongous wave just traveling up the blade. So I'm going to just put it down a little bit. Max brightness. So max brightness will control the max brightness of the blade. I can dim it, or I can put it back to 100. Put the brightness back up. Minimum brightness. If I have it set to 0, then those waves will be completely dark. So let's have a look. And you can see that they are way darker. We'll leave it at 10. And again, we can change the direction and the speed. We'll put the speed a little faster and we'll change it so it goes towards the hilt. Press OK, press the airplane, and there it is. Next is Hump Flicker. Again, a little bit of Chinese. Let's just leave it the way it is, see how it looks. And the Hump Flicker, it flickers and it looks as if there's a little bit of motion or flicker traveling up and down the blade. And the slider is increasing the speed at which it flickers. Now you have a really good understanding of what all those effects do and how to manipulate them to create amazing hum effects. Let's make one. I'm going to use 3 frames. My outside frame, I'm going to make it magenta. Then the next one underneath magenta, we'll make it cyan. And then we'll leave the innermost layer as red. I want to reduce the length of my magenta, so I'm going to set that to 50. So you can see that it's only 50% of the blade. I'm actually going to make it a little smaller. Let's make it 30%. And I want that magenta to be higher up. And let's just actually put it to 100, which makes it disappear. There we go. I want the tip of the blade to have fire. So I'm going to add fire. I'll choose magenta again. For the cyan part of the blade, I don't want that to take up the whole blade, so I'm going to actually make it a little smaller. And I'm going to move it up a little bit. So now you can see we have the 3 colors there. For that cyan layer, let's have that sparkling. And for the red layer, let's do 2 color gradual change from red to yellow. Alright, this is one funky looking blade. Let's send it to the saber. And there we go. If I wanted to save this funky looking hum design, I click on the save button and it saves it. If I want to delete any of my saved hum effects, I choose remove, device light, I choose hum, and it deleted it. If I want to set it back, I choose load local, hum, and you can see that these are 2 that I've created. So hum 101, I can send that, and there is my weird looking lightsaber. You can also edit them, delete them from here as well, and you can preview them. So I'm going to actually delete that one and delete that one. You shouldn't really delete the ones that are built in, so hum 1 to 9, leave them the way they are. And we're just going to send hum 2, and that's just your standard or steady. That wraps up part 3 hum tutorial. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section. If you found the video helpful, please click on that like button, hit subscribe, and tap the bell to stay up to date. I have been your host, the Frugal Jedi. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.